I discovered the 8 immortal kings of Samaria lived a total of 241,200 years. I've discovered through my research that these type of stories have an element of truth to them. Immortality is not only a possibility, but a reality. Could these people still exist in secret? Could they be watching? As there are numerous meanings to the various logos, names, and colors we use. One of the Hermetic principles is that the all is mind, the universe is mental. According to esoteric teachings, survivors of lost ancient civilizations seeded us through the mystery schools. Nearly all our great cosmological myths forming the foundation of the various sacred books of the world are based upon the Atlantean mystery traditions. Never dismiss a story because it is well known that such tales always have an element of truth to them. We have a very exciting show for all of you today. We are going to be discussing astrological cycles. Since ancient times, our ancestors have looked to the heavens in a beautiful sea of silvery lights, and they've wondered about the realms of almighty gods and potentates. These celestial movements have been personified into our ancient myths and legends. In fact, I did an episode on Gaia's mystery teachings about astrotheology and how it has affected our religions and every aspect of our lives. Well, today we have with us an incredible guest. Her name is Olga Morales, and she is the founder of Astrology for Gann Traders. She is not only a professional astrologer, author, educator, but also she has a degree in psychology from Melbourne University. Why I'm so excited about having her on the show is that she came highly recommended by the Grand Master of the Knights Templars, Timothy Hogan, and she has a very accurate way of predicting the stock market. She's taking all sorts of variables and probabilities and bringing them together into a science involving mathematics and star movements. But first of all, I want to tell you all about these incredible functional mushrooms that I have been taking every day. We have lion's mane here, which I take all the time to help with my memory, my focus, and concentration. It's absolutely amazing on those levels. It also boosts the immune system. I also take cordyceps for energy. It helps with libido. I find it to be an amazing combination with my coffee, and of course I take it with other things such as reishi and shaga, and I get that all from neurobuddha.com. If you do go on the website, make sure you use the coupon code ENOCH20 to save 20% at checkout. And we have with us also this incredible Orgone pyramid here, and you can get one just like it or ones that are bigger and beautiful and all sorts of different colors and designs. If you go to Michelle Hood's website, Light the Light Pyramids, and I find these Orgone pyramids create an amazing energy. They look fantastic, and I just love having them around. So Olga, I thought we'd get right into it here. How can we use astrology to predict the stock market, and how did you get interested in this?
Hi, Johnny. Well, I started astrology when I was in my teens, okay? So it's been a long time. And I studied professionally with my teacher. But then like in 2005, I got a phone call because I'd written a novel myself called The Eclipse of the Soul. I was researching eclipses, or I'm always a researcher. I wanted to understand eclipses, but I put them into a story. I made a novel out of it. Anyway, so I had a phone call from a gentleman wanting to buy my book. And then he said to me in the conversation, oh, by the way, have you heard of W.D. Gann? And I hadn't at the time, because most of the astrology I did was more psychological, you know, because I had the psychology degree. And he said to me, look, we're a group of traders and we want to learn astrology. Will you teach us? And I said, sure, I'll teach anyone. So it started like that. And they introduced me to him. And the first book I got, obviously, is this novel, Tunnel Through the Air. And you can see even the cover has got clues in it. So it's like they basically, what Gann has done, like they all used to do, they coded everything in here. And a lot of it has astrological cycles in there that, if you don't understand the symbolism in astrology, you're not going to understand the symbolism or the clues that he leaves in the book. Okay, so that's how they came to me, wanting to learn astrology so they could decipher this book. And me, so I tell people I'm a Scorpio with Virgo rising. That makes me like a forensic astrologer, I call myself. So I was like totally, so obsessed by it. I didn't sleep for many months because I wanted to work out this novel, as you do. And the other thing is, WD was very much into the esoteric. He was a high degree Mason, and also he left clues in here. He was also a numerologist, so there's numerology in here. That's why you have to get this copy of the book. You don't get something from the internet that's been printed and the numbers of the pages are not correct, because he leaves clues on page numbers. So you need to know astrological cycles. You obviously need to know a bit of numerology. If you're already a Mason, you might pick up Masonic things that I probably wouldn't. So there's lots of different levels to this novel, and that's why I haven't decoded all of it. I've just found things that I can see from my background as an astrologer. I can see things that, it's hard to teach someone who doesn't know astrology how to see those things easily, but I try. And so that's how I got into it. And like, I've been obsessed. Well, it's been 17 years now. And like, I dedicated the last 17 years to teaching traders all about W.D. Gann and his esoteric side. So he was an astrologer, and he used astrological cycles to forecast the stock market. But not only that, he was ingenious. He actually using the planets to give him price levels as well. He was doing lotto, he was doing horse racing. You can use astrology for a lot of things, and I think he mastered all of those. That's why he's such an enigma, and everyone wants to know what was he doing, Olga? And I said, well, I only know a little bit. I can't say, I don't call myself an expert. I don't believe anyone's an expert in Gann. Only Gann is himself. But I try my best to, work out what I can see. And I've been able to predict, the markets pretty well. And there's always an element of error in everything we do. I've never said that I get it 100%. Nobody can. But the natural cycles that continue, WD was very much, he tells you to read the Bible at least 3 times. Now, I went to a Catholic girls' school. My parents are Italian. And I actually wrote my first column at 16 on astrology at our school, for our school magazine. So I know the Bible. I don't know it inside out. But once you get into Gann, you go down so many rabbit holes that you start looking at the Bible with different eyes, because you can see that, how did the prophets prophesize? They were using astrological cycles, and everything as above, so below. They understood the cycles, and it was understanding the cycles. They depended on it for survival, and it was mainly weather forecasting. When were they going to forecast that there was going to be drought or flooding, and how to preserve, in those times. And so anyway, there's a lot, and that's why I was so intrigued, and I still am. I get very excited. I mean, there's a picture of him here. He's always with me pretty much. So as I said, I dedicated the last 17 years of my life to him. I've gone to see his grave. He's buried in Brooklyn. What's it called? Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. And I've gone to visit all his offices that he had on Wall Street. So I've done a bit of a pilgrimage for him.
That is utterly amazing. And why I love what you do is that you've taken this as a real science. And when you look at Robert Hewitt Brown and the books that he had put out, like Masonic astrology and stellar theology, and those sort of keys that were there, that the Masonic teachings were, there's a totally different type of way of tapping into these things as an esoteric science once you have the keys. When we look at it the way you have, and you have a very large following, you have something like over 20,000 followers on Twitter, and people that follow you. And obviously you have a high degree of accuracy of looking at these things. Just to give people some background, that when you look at how astrology's changed, like even if we look at the Greek word for astro, meaning stars, and the logi part comes from the logos, or a knowledge or science. And today we've gone into astronomy, and the nomi is just a measurement or arrangement of the celestial bodies. But when we look over at the constellations, which I wanted to ask you about today, we have 12 constellations used in this system for the most part, some of these, and I know this differs in certain systems that you look at, but that comes from a Latin word, right? Constellatio, which is like a set of stars. And to the Greeks, when we look at zodiac, that comes from zodiacus, meaning a small circle of animals or little animals. Now, some have said that these systems came from shepherds that were minding the flocks of their sheep. They were lying on their backs at night, looking up at the stars, and they came up with a system. But I tend to think, just as Manly P. Hall had said in The Secret Teachings of All Ages, and others have said, that this science of whether it's astronomy, whether it is alchemy, that this came from maybe even our prehistoric civilizations, like some have called Atlantis, that it is a very, very ancient science that's been passed down through all of our civilizations. Where do you think that this science came from?
It's changed over time. You know, like I love Egypt. That's one of my things. And in Egypt, they were really studying the stars. It wasn't the zodiac. The zodiac came later. So it was stellar, and they were watching the stars rising in the east and then setting in the west. And that was the whole story of that every day, the stars being born and dying. And they used the deacons. I know you know about these. And, you know, like every 10 days, they had a star in charge of the east. And so their stories were like that. And we still have those. I've done a whole, in the tarot, you know, we've got the deacons. I did a whole lecture recently on it, which I love doing. And then we moved into, you know, some of the cultures have a lunar calendar. So they're using lunar mansions. So we've got so many things that we still continue today. We've got the deacons, we continue, and we've got the lunar mansions. So we've got 27 or 28, depending if it's the Indian or the Arabic ones. And then we have the zodiac. So it's come from stellar, lunar to solar. But all those systems are actually in the Bible. Mm-hmm. You know, like I've studied a lot myself, even before I found other people, because Gann tells you to do it. I said, I'm just going to work this out myself if I can. I mean, I did get help from some older books about how to understand the cycles in the Bible, because the stars were actually like the characters. Even if you look at W.D. Gann's book, people say to me, Olga, how do we start looking? How do we start with this book? What's he doing? Because it's a little bit of a boring story, but if you look at it like they do in the Bible, the characters are like the planets. So every character can be a planet, or it can be like a star. Obviously in the Bible, it would be more like the stars had an essence, and so they became like a character in the myths. So for me, all the myths are just astrological cycles that's how they taught. They didn't go to the movies, they didn't have Netflix, but they had the canopy at night to study the stars and also to tell the stories, so they were never forgotten in the myths. So so that my belief is was probably came before Egypt, and even further. You know, there's lots of theories, but we can't really prove exactly where it came from. But I think it's quite ancient.
I think so too, because I know we can go back into the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, in the Vedas in ancient India. We have this in all these ancient cultures. They were tracking these movements, and you know, we've often wondered how did they have such an accurate knowledge of these things, such as, you know, it was Galileo Galilei that I believe it was 1610 out of his little observatory in Civitavecchia over in Italy, where you're from, actually, where he had this telescope that he starts creating. But even in second century Rome, we knew that Kronos or Saturn had rings around him, which is fascinating that they knew that. And if you go over to Peking or Beijing, China, there was these long tubes that they'd have at these observatories that later the Jesuits came there, that they were able to look to these long tubes to sort of drown out the light and get more of a view, that they were able to observe things from there. But you mentioned the Egyptians, and again, Robert Hewitt Brown, in his Stellar Theology and Masonic Astrology, he had told us that even Zodiacus or zodiac, that word came from the Egyptians, he thought, which was zoon. And again, zo coming from life, and on, as you know, you've been to Egypt, like Heliopolis or on, the place of the light or a being, that he believed that this was a root that later the Greeks and others got that knowledge. And we know that, let's say, we talk about the Atlantis story, that's actually an Egyptian story. So I do think it is a very, very ancient science that came into there. And with that being said, what would you say to people who are detractors of astrology, that the points that they make, that it's a pseudoscience, that it doesn't work? Because obviously there's something to it. You know, when you look at these movements and how Gann or you are able to predict these things with such accuracy and how these changes are taking place, what would you say to those detractors?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent all my life, people saying to me, "Oh, well, why don't you get a real job, study something?" Because I did go to uni and I got my psychology degree, but astrology was just something that, it's like it's in my blood. I've got the stars running through my veins. I keep telling people, I don't have to. I never feel anymore that I have to prove how astrology works, because I see it all the time. I make the most amazing predictions. I follow what the ancient astrologers were doing, not the really ancient ones, because I don't do real traditional astrology. But I follow, Gann was able to do it. I mean, he was forecasting the stock market. And there's a famous quote by J.P. Morgan. He goes, millionaires don't use astrologers, billionaires use astrologers. So all the smart people actually use it. They don't tell you, they may not tell you, but they're using cycles. A lot of people talk about cycles, but they don't want to mention that they're astrological cycles. So, you're missing out if you're not looking at your cycles of astrology. Even if I'm not talking about just sun sign astrology. I mean, when you get your personal horoscope cast by an astrologer, it's so detailed that you get so much information about who you are, why you're here. I believe that we choose the time of our reincarnation, and your chart is like the blueprint of that contract you made to come back to Earth. So it can tell you so much about why you chose that time and place. And so, yeah, it's just the most intriguing thing. And once people work out, well, maybe I can actually make money, like with trading. So the stock market, if you think about what it is, it's actually mass psychology. And as you're talking about, our bodies are made up of, over 70% of water. So the moon has a big impact on our inner cycle, our tides, okay? And that controls everyone on a mass level. Our emotions, selling depending on how they're feeling. And if there's, like, at the time, there's hard aspects of like the planets keep moving every day, and so as they move, they interact between one another. Sometimes it's harmonious and we're feeling quite happy and it's all going nice, but then other times they're conflicting, they're making hard angles, and then hard angles, and it's not harmonious, right? And so we're feeling agitated, maybe fearful, and you press the sell button, and people panic. So that's how it works. And so as an astrologer, I can predict that very easily, because we understand the cycles. And that's why if you're trading and you want an edge, I'm not saying that you only use astrology, because you get yourself into trouble. But if you've already got a system, astrology is fantastic for timing, because we know where the planets are going to be, like 10,000 years into the future if you want to. But the other thing about WD, he tells you to study the past. So anytime I make a forecast, I go back as much data as I can. I analyze what happened in the past, And then I say, okay, well, that happened last time Saturn was in Aquarius. This is what happened. Now it's coming back to that position. It may happen again. Okay, so Gann was very much in saying history repeats. Okay, sometimes it doesn't repeat exactly. They say it rhymes, but we need to know these long cycles of planets. And that's part of my work is analysis, which I love doing. And yeah, so, it's very scientific. I mean, when I started astrology, we didn't even have computers. Most of the classes was all mathematical. By the time I cast a chart, it would take me an hour. There's so much maths involved. So it's not like just a tarot card that you do pull out a tarot card and make a prediction. This is quite structured and detailed. And yeah, and it's been around forever.
In our ancient teachings, we talk about the precession of the equinoxes. And of course, Plato talked about the great year. We're currently in the age of Pisces. And of course, we're leaving that age and we're moving towards the age of Aquarius. Would you be able to answer for us, how far are we off into adjusting into the age of Aquarius? And what do you see happening? Are we starting to see the signs of that already?
Well, according to my calculations, we have another 6 degrees, okay, between until we get into the age of Aquarius. Now, 6 degrees, we have to multiply by the precession rate, which is 72 degrees per 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So 6 times 72 is 432 years that we still have to go to technically get into the age of Aquarius, okay? But in terms of the huge cycle, because it's, every age is 2,160 years, it's only that 6 degrees is only a tiny point of it. So in astrology, that's almost like us saying there's an orb, we're moving into it. So it really, it's starting, the energy is starting. But why it's like the dawning of the age of Aquarius for sure, because what happened in 2020, the 2020 vision we were calling it, was that Jupiter and Saturn came together. They've got a cycle where every 60 years, but also 240 years. They'd come back into, they were conjunct at 0 degrees of Aquarius, right? So this was like the beginning of this whole energy starting, because they hadn't been in an air sign for 240 years. Previous to that, every time they met, it was in Earth. Okay, so we're moving into air, which is Aquarius. Even though we know Aquarius has the water, carrying the water, he's actually in astrology is an air sign. Okay, now next year in March, actually when we're in Egypt, Johnny, this is one of the pivotal things that's happening while we're there, is Pluto moves into Aquarius, and that's after 250 years. Okay, so you can see how we've got these outer planets already giving us a feel for what the Aquarian energy is all about, and there's going to be a lot of change. So we're moving from with the Pluto, it's been in Capricorn. Capricorn's all about governments and structures and tradition, and then we're going to be moving into Aquarius, which is all about inventiveness and humanity and people coming together, and also new inventions and it's like a revolutionary sign and complete change, the breaking of the status quo.
And people don't know this, but if you're listening, Olga picked the dates for our Egypt tour, the initiations into the mysteries of Egypt that's coming up in March 2023. And by the way, you can find out about it in the links below. However, she will also be on this tour, and there are some amazing people just like her and other people I can't even mention that are coming along. All kinds of initiations, alignments, incredible things. It's going to be very, very powerful, things we can't even advertise. And
it is, Johnny. You know why I was excited about it? Because when I looked it up, because I always look at cycles, and like the fact that we're there, obviously for the equinox is a bonus, because the spring equinox is the beginning of everything, and you want to, it's a real important time of the year. It's actually essentially the new year astrologically. It wasn't January, it's the 21st of March or the 22nd, depending what time. Sometimes it's a different date. But when we're there for the equinox, that day, within 24 hours, it's going to be a new moon at 0 degrees of Aries. Now, to have an equinox and a new moon in that 24 hours doesn't happen all the time. I mean, and I had to look back because, I wanted to be able to tell you the last time that happened was in 1985. So we're looking at 38 years ago. And previous to that, 1966, then 1928, and then 1909. So we're going to be there at a very special time. And what I love about the whole thing about Aries is it's the ram, all right? And we know in Egypt that everything's about, there's a ram there. And for the Templars' emblem is a lamb or the ram, the Agnus Dei, the Lamb of God. And so it's a very special time. And can I tell you one more thing, Johnny?
Please, we
this
all
is
want
why
to
I'm so excited about Egypt. Is that when I was reading Timothy's books, I've got all the Timothy Hogan's books. This is in The Way of the Templar. He's got a section here. It says, coming from the root tradition in Egypt, at Giza, the special astrology that has been passed down by all these traditions focuses on the 3 stars of Orion's belt, the 5 stars of the Hades cluster, and the 7 stars of the Pleiades, with Aldebaran directly in the center of these clusters in the sky, and hence the shafts of the Great Pyramid align with these star systems, with the capstone pointing to Aldebaran. Now that's a bull's eye, Aldebaran's the eye of the bull. This is also the reason why the numbers 3, 5, and 7 together held significance in some of the traditions that came out of the Templars. Okay, so when I read that, I found it amazing that when we're going to have our 2 hours in the pyramid, our special 2 hours inside, when I cast the chart for that, which I'm just going to look at because I've got it on this computer here, we're going to be exactly, when we come out of the pyramid, we're going to have exactly those stars above us. So while we're in there, like when we look at astrology, whatever's on the midheaven is one of the most important positions of the heavens. We're going to have Aldebaran, the moon. Believe it or not, you can't make this up. I hadn't read this thing in Timothy's book when I saw this chart. The moon it's actually going to be conjunct. That means together with Aldebaran. I mean, you can't make this up. It's going to be so special. And we're going to have Orion's belt above us. And when we come out, while we're in there, and also Sirius. So the main stars.
That's when we have our private permission inside the pyramid, where we're going in, we're going to be coming out, and this is all going to be happening at the same time as these powerful energies and things that are happening.
Amazing alignment. It's just like exactly like what's in Timothy's book.
And Olga, we have you there. So we're at the beautiful temple of Hathor, as we call it, and we're at Dendara Temple, and we're looking at the map that we link back to Ptolemy, but the map of the stars, it's on the roof. The original is at the Louvre today, and the Egyptians aren't that happy about it. But we have you there to look at that, to look at Newt, to look at the stars, the astrology. It's going to be so amazing to have you along, and we want you to give some talks and to talk to everybody as well. And I just think it's so.
I love it. Yeah, no, when I went to the Temple of Hathor in Dendara, and you look up at the ceiling, I mean, you do get a stiff neck at the end of it because I was trying to take so many photos. But that's where all the deacons are. I mean, I can talk about them. I've done a whole little thing on the tarot and the deacons and everything, how, they've been passed down. But when we look at the zodiac wheel in that little room, I was expecting some huge room, but it's quite low and small. You could almost touch it if you're tall enough. I've got a whole lot of information about all that. So yeah, you can't shut me up, Johnny, when I start talking.
I don't want to shut you up. I want you to keep going. And you mentioned 72 earlier, when we were mentioning the precession of the equinoxes and the ages. And folks, if you want to look up something, look up 72, look it up on Wikipedia even, and see the religious significance of it. First of all, you have the 72 names of God, the 72 angels. It goes on and on and on, the number 72. It's all throughout the Bible. And even when you look at the Greek Septuagint Bible, Septuagint is 72. We're told 72 translators or scholars, which obviously is a reference to the 72. You see that all the time throughout the mysteries, that this has been encoded into every religion, all of our myths. personified into there. But I also want to ask you, Olga, aside from all the exciting stuff we have coming up, and I really want to have you on for more shows and topics and roundtable discussions as well. As I can't wait to go on these adventures with you, because I think you're awesome,
Sure.
and people that follow your work can see how incredible the teachings you have and what you put out are. I want to also ask you that currently we are in the month of November, as it's November 2022 at the time of recording this video. And I'm saying that for those that go back and listen to this or watch this interview, that what would you say right now is happening as far as what we've seen with Mars, what's happening with Jupiter? What is affecting us right now?
Okay, so this year, Mars is going to be in Gemini for almost 7 months. We've already gone past it. It won't move into Cancer, actually, when we're in Egypt. There's another thing that's going to happen, okay? But at the moment, he's, and like in Gemini we know is all about communication, okay? Well, dealing with people, your mind. Mars can bring a lot of fuel to that. It can become aggressive sometimes, especially now he's retrograde. And so it rubs you the wrong way. You can get angry really quickly. Someone can really push your buttons. You can cut yourself literally because Mars makes you bleed. So I know a few people have had quite dramatic accidents and cutting themselves and so forth, accidents on the road. It's hard to sleep because, you know, Gemini is ruled by Mercury, but it's also to do with our nervous system, breathing. You might be not breathing properly, shallow anxiety. So I tell people, you know, the good thing about astrology, if you know what's happening up above, as above, so below, you can then say, okay, so this too shall pass. It's only going to be the next week that I'm going to feel like this. So it helps people prepare and also to cope with certain situations. They don't get too stressed about issues that are around us. Okay, so that's why I love astrology. You know, it's foresight, not hindsight. And yeah, especially for traders need to know when, even W.D. Gann, he tells you that men and women need to know their own tides, you know, when's a good time for them and when it isn't, so that, you know, you don't make unrealistic plans, or you don't risk so much with your trading, or you don't, you know, like get married at a certain time. Like I do people do ask me to, you know, look at I have done a couple of friends' wedding charts, you know, like, and we can do business. Sometimes people ask me for business. Buying a home is really important. Traveling is really important. So, you know, having that, you want the planets to be helping you with your venture or your ambition. You know, see, when we've got planets that are in hard aspect, usually your plans don't go off. They don't go off how you want them to be. You want to have expansive and supportive planets aspects happening when you do these things. So that's part of what astrologers or people, you know, go and consult astrologers usually when they're having a hard time. But if you're smart, you should be going when you want to prepare for things. Like if you've got a project you want to do, or you want to make a movie, or you want to, whatever it is, whatever venture you have, you want the planets helping you with that.
Yeah,
okay? So that's why.
sort of like if you're going out on a camping trip or you have some kind of outdoor event, you're going to check the weather. And this is sort of like checking the space weather. It's no different than aligning it and say, okay, am I going to go out and set up a tent when I know there's a storm coming with a whole bunch of rain, or am I going to do it in ideal conditions with good weather? And there's no doubt that if you know what to look for, we know that all throughout the ancient world, these things were mapped out according to the stars. Our secret societies use dates and astrology to map things out. And I say that with the fact that I know many folks that have studied these systems. And once you have the keys, as you do, and you've looked at it in that way, there's a very clear roadmap. And I think you've demonstrated that very, very well. I just wanted to ask you, for anyone out there that's watching this, that they want to look at this roadmap or they wanted to get a personal chart, then can you do those things if they contact you?
Well, I don't do many personal charts anymore because I'm busy doing all my other things. But like if you come to my website, Astrology for Gann Traders, it's called. I've got a few things that you might be interested in. If you want to learn the trading part, that's, that depends, but not everyone's into the finance. They call me a financial astrologer, but it's not like I don't really give people advice. I'm not allowed to do that. But the way I see myself is I'm teaching you the astrology so then you can make your own judgment when it comes to your own trading. I don't want people dependent on me saying, Olga, should I buy and sell, which I'm not allowed to do. But I want you to be able to learn that so that you have the confidence to decide.
How about cryptocurrencies? Does it work for them as well?
Yeah, sure it does. You can use anything anything that has a cycle with the cryptos, because I do a bit of Bitcoin because it's popular. But when you don't have a lot of data, that means I haven't been going on for that long. It's really hard to do long-term analysis. So like when I do the analysis for the Dow Jones, I've got data going back to 1885. So I can have a look at all the planetary cycles from the past, and that's why that gives me more confidence. Whereas when we've got these cryptos that have only been around for a few years, I don't have as much confidence, even though I can look at the natal chart. So we get the natal chart when something starts or first traded, and we use that like a birth chart, like someone is born, and that's our base. And then that base, the planets keep moving around, okay? And every time they move around, they're making like little aspects to all the planets in the natal chart. They're called transits. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not so good. And so that's when I alert people. So when it's not so good, you're probably going to have a reaction, a correction, they call it. And when it's good, you get more bullish energy. So it can be very simple and very literal. And when I first started this, I met a guy who was trading, and he was using, which I thought was ingenious, because we know the moon is one of the most powerful influence on all of us and trading our emotions. He was using a fishing almanac. So,
Wow.
how we know when there's going to be high tides, low tides, whatever. And he was using that. He would know when there was going to be swings in the market. And that's exactly how it is, because we know when there's a full moon, there are more. If you go to a hospital, the nurses and doctors will tell you that there are more accidents, there are more murders, there are more rapes, there are
The
more
full moon. Lunatics.
psychiatric, like lunatic type
Lunar.
things, And
Yeah.
so and like imagine when the same thing as an eclipse, right? A lunar eclipse that we've just had the other day, and the crypto market crashed. Okay, so eclipses are one of the most powerful thing that we can experience. And if there's an outer planet that is also involved with the eclipse, it makes it more intense. And that's what I was saying, because we had Uranus there. Okay, Uranus shakes everything. There are a few earthquakes that we had, big ones, and the market shook too, mainly the crypto market, because Uranus is, it rules technology. So it's all to do with this new technology, a new currency. It's completely different to what we've ever had before, and that's what it's all about. So I love it. I love it because, like even weather forecasting, you mentioned weather, Johnny, there's astrology. It's called meteorology. So there are people that use the cycles to forecast weather as well. And Gann was doing that. He was doing everything.
That's amazing, all that Gann was doing. It really is incredible and a testimony to his knowledge and how advanced he was. And you've picked up the torch. You are the Gann torch carrier. However, I want to ask you, have you ever looked into the years 2024 and 25? I think something really big is coming, and I think there's going to be massive change during those times, and it's going to be quite shocking. But what does the astrological outlook?
I don't know. I haven't looked that forward, Johnny. You put me on the spot. If you had asked me, I would have looked it up. But astrologically for Gann, 2025, he calls that the year of ascension. Any year that ends in 5, he talks that's a year of ascension.
Fascinating.
So according to the market, that means the market should be going up at that time. You know why he says that? This is where he comes back from the Bible, because he said Jesus ascended on the fifth day. So there's all this symbolism about, you know, the whole journey of Jesus. What happens? It's like he uses it, applies it to the stock market.
Can I ask you a favor then? Would you be able to sometime do the astrology for the year 2024 to 25, and we could do a show on that and explore it? Because I think there's two things I think are going to happen. I think potentially we're going to see some major changes on the Earth, like maybe geological and otherwise. And also, I think we could see new types of financial systems roll out and massive economic changes. And I'm a futurist, so I see that, you know, we will make it to a great future. And what you said is very interesting, you know, being the year of ascension, because I think that will be massive. But I would love to hear what you have to say about those years once you look at the movements.
Sure, no problem. I'll come back.
That would be amazing. You have been incredible, and I have enjoyed talking to you so very much. I think you're just a brilliant, brilliant soul, and what you do is so amazing. You really bring a lot of credibility to astrology, and your message is amazing. And I can't wait for everything we have coming up. I'm definitely going to put all your links down below on how people can find you. But in the meantime, what is your main website and social media where people can find you?
Well, you know, my name's Olga Morales. Now, my website is Astrology for Gann Traders. And also on Twitter, my handle is AstroGann33. And that's it. And I'm in Melbourne, Australia. I'm far away. But
you're one day ahead. You're in the future.
Yeah, I am. Always come from the future. Always.
So everyone, there you have it. You know how to find Olga Morales. Make sure that you go to her website, you check her out, you follow her on Twitter if you aren't already, and be sure to like, comment down below, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. And we'll see you all soon on the next video.